July 1518. The sun beat down on the cobblestone streets of Strasbourg. It was a time of hardship, yet life went on. Then a woman named Frau Trophäa stepped into the street. She began to dance. Her movements were not those of joy. They were uncontrolled, frantic. Frau Trophäa danced for hours, her face contorted in a mask of pain. People stopped to watch, curious and afraid. No one knew what had overtaken her. Days passed. Frau Trophäa did not stop dancing. Her feet bled, her body weakened. Still, she danced. And then, something even stranger happened. Others began to join her. What began with one woman quickly spread like wildfire. Within a week, dozens of people in Strasbourg were seized by the same manic need to dance. They danced in the streets, in the marketplace, even in the churchyards. The dancing plague, as it came to be known, was relentless. The afflicted danced for days, weeks, even months. They could not eat or sleep. They lost all track of time and place. The city of Strasbourg fell into a state of chaos. The authorities were baffled. Physicians were called in, but they could offer no explanation or cure. The plague continued to spread, its grip tightening with each passing day. The dancers were not enjoying themselves. Far from it. Eyewitness accounts described the agony etched on their faces. They begged for help, for the dancing to stop, but their bodies would not obey. Their feet were bloodied and blistered. Their bodies were racked with exhaustion and dehydration. Some suffered heart attacks, others went mad. Still they danced. The plague seemed to feed on itself. The sight of one person dancing seemed to trigger the same compulsion in others. Fear and exhaustion only amplified the effects. Medieval medicine offered little comfort to the afflicted. Physicians, schooled in the ancient theories of Galen, believed the dancing plague was caused by an excess of hot blood in the brain. Bloodletting was a common treatment, but it proved useless. Other remedies included purging, sweating, and the application of leeches. Some physicians even resorted to strapping the dancers to wooden planks in an attempt to restrain them. Religion also played a role in the search for a cure. Many believed the plague was a curse from God, a punishment for sins. Processions were held, prayers were offered. Still, the dancing continued. In the centuries since the dancing plague, many theories have been put forward to explain its cause. Scholars and historians have delved into ancient texts, debated in academic circles, and proposed various explanations, each trying to make sense of this bizarre phenomenon that gripped entire communities. One of the most enduring is mass hysteria. This theory has captivated the imagination of many because it suggests a psychological explanation for what appears to be a physical ailment. The idea is that the dancers were not suffering from a disease in the traditional sense, but rather from a kind of psychological contagion. This theory suggests that the dancers were caught in a shared delusion, a kind of collective madness. Imagine a group of people so deeply affected by their environment and the stressors of their time that they enter a trance-like state, moving and dancing uncontrollably. It's a fascinating, albeit unsettling concept. Proponents of this theory point to the fact that the plague spread primarily among young women, who were often seen as more susceptible to emotional and psychological disturbances. In medieval times, young women were frequently associated with emotional volatility, a stereotype that has persisted in various forms throughout history. This demographic was often linked to episodes of mass hysteria, not just in the context of the dancing plague, but in other historical events as well. The emotional and social pressures faced by young women could have made them more vulnerable to such collective psychological phenomena. They also note that the plague seemed to spread through social networks, much like a viral trend in today's world. People were more likely to be affected if they knew someone who was already dancing. This social contagion aspect adds another layer of complexity to the mass hysteria theory. Observers and onlookers might have been drawn into the frenzy, either out of empathy, fear, or a subconscious need to conform to the group's behavior. The sight of friends and neighbors dancing uncontrollably could have triggered a similar response in others, perpetuating the cycle. However, mass hysteria fails to fully explain the physical toll the dancing took on its victims. The sheer exhaustion, The physical injuries and the extreme fatigue experienced by the dancers suggest that there might be more to the story than just a psychological explanation. It also doesn't account for the fact that some dancers died, not from exhaustion, but from seemingly unrelated causes like heart attacks. These sudden deaths add another layer of mystery to the phenomenon, challenging the mass hysteria hypothesis. The complexity of the dancing plague continues to baffle researchers. While mass hysteria offers a compelling narrative, it is clear that this historical enigma may never be fully understood. The dancing plague remains a haunting reminder of the mysteries that still lie within the human mind and body. Another theory links the dancing plague to ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that can grow on rye, a staple grain in medieval Europe. Consuming ergot-contaminated bread can cause a range of symptoms, including hallucinations, seizures, and convulsions. Ergot poisoning can also lead to a condition called St. Anthony's fire, which causes burning sensations in the limbs and can lead to gangrene. Could this explain the relentless dancing and the physical agony experienced by the victims? While ergot poisoning could explain some of the symptoms, it doesn't quite fit with all the historical evidence. For instance, ergot poisoning typically affects entire communities, yet the dancing plague seemed to target specific groups. Some historians believe the dancing plague was a cultural phenomenon, rooted in the religious and social anxieties of the time. The dancing plague, also known as choreomania, saw people dancing uncontrollably, sometimes to the point of exhaustion or even death. This bizarre phenomenon has puzzled scholars for centuries, leading to various theories about its origins and causes. Strasbourg in 1518 was a city in turmoil. The city was grappling with numerous challenges, including political instability and economic hardship. The streets were filled with tension, and the air was thick with uncertainty. People were desperate for relief, for a sign that their suffering would end. Famine, disease, and social unrest were rampant. The harvests had failed, leading to widespread hunger. Plagues and diseases swept through the population, claiming lives and leaving families in mourning. Social structures were breaking down, and the sense of community was eroding. It was a time of great hardship and despair. In times of crisis, people often turned to faith for solace. Churches were filled with people seeking comfort and answers. They prayed for deliverance, for a miracle that would end their suffering. Religious leaders preached about divine intervention and the power of faith to overcome adversity. But what happens when faith fails? When the prayers seem to go unheard and the suffering continues unabated? The sense of disillusionment can be overwhelming. People begin to question their beliefs, their faith, and even their own worthiness. The very foundation of their existence feels shaken. What happens when prayers go unanswered and suffering continues unabated? The despair deepens, and the sense of hopelessness grows. People feel abandoned not just by their leaders and their community, but by the divine itself. The weight of their suffering becomes almost unbearable. Could the dancing plague have been a manifestation of this collective despair, a physical expression of the emotional and psychological turmoil that people were experiencing? The uncontrollable dancing could have been a way for people to release their pent-up emotions, to find some form of escape from their harsh reality. Perhaps the dancing was a form of release, a way to express the fear and frustration that people were unable to articulate in any other way. Dance in this context became a language of its own, a means to communicate the incommunicable. It was a desperate attempt to find relief, to feel alive amidst the overwhelming despair. Or perhaps it was a desperate plea for divine intervention, a physical manifestation of the belief that God would only heed the prayers of those who were truly suffering. The more intense the suffering, the more likely it was that divine mercy would be granted. The dancing plague, then, could be seen as a collective cry for help, a last-ditch effort to attract the attention of the divine and bring an end to their suffering. Over 500 years later, the dancing plague of 1518 remains an enigma. Despite numerous theories, no single explanation fully accounts for all the facts. Was it mass hysteria, ergot poisoning, a cultural phenomenon, or a combination of factors? Perhaps the answer lies lost to time, buried beneath the weight of centuries. Or perhaps the truth is even stranger than we can imagine. Whatever the cause, the dancing plague stands as a stark reminder of the mysteries that still lurk within the human psyche. The dancing plague of 1518 may seem like a bizarre anomaly, a peculiar footnote in the annals of history. Yet this strange event, where hundreds of people danced uncontrollably for days, even weeks, until they collapsed from exhaustion or worse, death, is more than just a historical curiosity. It is a window into the human psyche and the social conditions of the time. But its echoes can still be felt today. The dancing plague serves as a reminder of how collective human behavior can be influenced by stress, fear, and social contagion. In our modern world, we see similar phenomena, though perhaps not as extreme, in the form of mass hysteria, panic attacks, and other psychosomatic disorders. It reminds us that even in our modern age, with all our scientific advancements, there are still things we cannot fully explain. The dancing plague challenges our understanding of the mind-body connection and the ways in which psychological stress can manifest physically. It also highlights the powerful influence of the mind on the body. The mind's ability to affect physical health is a topic of ongoing research, and the dancing plague is a historical example of this phenomenon. The fact that people could literally dance themselves to death is a testament to the complex and often unpredictable ways in which our bodies respond to stress, fear, and belief. This event underscores the importance of understanding the psychological factors that can lead to such extreme physical reactions. The dancing plague may be a mystery, but it is a mystery that continues to fascinate and challenge us to this day. It serves as a poignant reminder of the intricate and sometimes inexplicable relationship between the mind and body, and the enduring power of human belief and emotion.